This video will cover the second unit of US politics, the US Congress. This video will cover the following topics within Congress as a whole. It will look at an introduction to Congress, its powers, the committee system, the legislative process, oversight and scrutiny, representation, how Congress votes, partisanship, is Congress broken, and a comparison with the UK. This particular video is going to give you an introduction to Congress, as well as looking at its structure, the powers that it has, specifically comparing the House of Representatives to the Senate.
When the US broke away from the UK in 1776, the first system of government consisted only of a legislative. The Articles of Confederation provided America with no executive or judiciary because it was decided collectively and then implemented by the 13 states later on. This was intended to ensure that no monarch-like figure could emerge. This system of government proved inadequate to meet the challenge facing the young country and was replaced by the current system that was devised at the Philadelphia Convention in 1787. However, even in the revised system, there was an intention that policy would be made collectively to avoid the emergence of a monarch-like figure. Congress was therefore expected to be the most important and most powerful branch of government. Congress is bicameral, which means that it is made up of two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. This arrangement for the legislative branch of government was one of compromise, devised by the Founding Fathers at the Philadelphia Convention. Some delegates had wanted for the states to be equally represented in the legislative, whilst others had wanted representation to be proportional to population. The compromise was to have a two-chamber structure. In the lower house, the House of Representatives, the states would be represented proportionally to their population, but in the upper house, the Senate, the states would be represented equally. This kept both the states with large populations and those with small populations content. Here is a breakdown of the structure of the two chambers of Congress. Let's look at the House of Representatives first. This is the lower house, which is made up of 435 members. Each member represents a congressional district within their state. A House of Representatives would serve 2-year terms and must be at least 25 years old and have been a US citizen for at least 7 years. Another requirement for the House of Representatives is that they must be the resident of the state that they represent. The Senate is the upper house of the two chambers, and this has 100 members. A Senate represents the entire state, and each state is represented by 2 senators who serve 6-year terms. A senator must be at least 30 years old and also have been a US citizen for at least 9 years, as well as a resident of the state that they represent. The expectation that Congress would be the most powerful branch of government led to an addition to the system of separation of powers and checks and balances. The powers of the legislature were divided between 2 chambers, with each monitoring how the other used its powers. The arrangement for the Senate to be directly elected by the people of the state happened ever since 1914 under the 17th Amendment. Congressional elections are held every 2 years where the whole House and 2/3 of the Senate are up for re-election. As each state gets 2 senators, and there are 50 states, this makes up the 100 senators. Currently, the House of Representatives is made up of 435 members. Each state has a certain number of representatives proportional to its population. For example, California has 53 members, whereas South Carolina only has 7. In order to calculate how many representatives a state can have, the number is reapportioned after each 10-yearly census, which is held in 0-number years, such as 2000, 2010, and 2020. Some states gain House seats while others lose them. For example, following the 2010 census, the Texas House delegation rose from 32 to 36, while New York's fell from 29 to 27, as did Ohio's from 18 to 16. Here is the current makeup of the 116th Congress. As you can see, the Republicans strongly control both the House of Representatives and the Senate. In the House of Representatives, there are 235 Republicans to the 193 Democrats, with only 7 vacancies. For a 2/3 majority in the House of Representatives, you currently need 215 votes, which means that if all Republicans vote along party lines, they can pass legislation. In terms of the Senate, it isn't clearly controlled by the Republicans. In fact, of the 100 seats, Republicans hold 51, whilst Democrats and Independents hold 49. A two-thirds majority in the Senate is 60, meaning the Republicans are slightly under this number. Let's look at representation of the people in Congress. The average age at the beginning of the 116th Congress was 57.6 years for representatives and 62.9 years for senators. The US Constitution requires representatives to be at least 25 years old when they take office. The youngest representative in the 116th Congress and the youngest woman ever to serve in Congress is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a Democrat from New York, who was 29 at the beginning of the 116th Congress. The oldest representative is Don Young, who is a Republican for Arkansas, who was 85 years old at the beginning of the Congress. Senators must be at least 30 years old when they take office. The youngest senator in the 116th Congress is Josh Hawley, a Republican from Montana, who is 39 years old. The oldest senator is Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat for California, who is 85 years old. 97% of the members of the 116th Congress report an affiliation with a specific religion. 54.9% of members are Protestant, with Baptist being the most represented domination. 30.5% of members are Catholic, 6.4% of members are Jewish, 1.9% of members are Mormon, 2 members are Buddhist, 3 members are Muslim, and 3 members are Hindu. Other religious affiliations that are represented include Greek Orthodox and Pentecostal Christian. 130 women are in the 116th Congress. That is 21 more than the last Congress. 105 sit in the House of Representatives and 25 sit in the Senate. Of those 105 women in the House, 90 are Democrats and 15 are Republican. Of the 25 women in the Senate, 17 are Democrats and 8 are Republican. There is a record number of African American members in the Senate as well, with 10.5% of total membership being made up by African American members. This is 5 more than the 115th Congress. 54 serve in the House and 3 serve in the Senate. There are 51 Hispanic or Latino members in the 116th Congress, 9.4% of the total membership, and this also is a record number. 46 serve in the House and 5 serve in the Senate. A record number of Asian, South Asian or Pacific Islanders are also in the 116th Congress, making up 3.8% of total membership. There are also 4 American Indian or Native American members of the 116th Congress, 2 of each party, and they are all in the House of Representatives. Under the Constitution, Congress has shared and concurrent powers. The ones in blue relate only to the Senate. All bills must pass through all stages in both houses. The same version of a bill must be agreed upon before it passes to the President. Neither house can override the wishes of another. The Constitution does, however, grant one special lawmaking power to the House of Representatives, in that only the House can begin the consideration of money bills. Whilst the Constitution makes no explicit statement concerning Congress's power of oversight, it is an implied power from Article 1, Section 8, where Congress may investigate any subject that is properly within its scope of legislative powers. Later on in the video, I will look into congressional oversight in more depth. Both must vote a 2/3 majority to override the President's veto. In September 2016, Congress overrode Obama's veto of a bill which would have allowed the families of victims of 9/11 to sue the government of Saudi Arabia. This is the only veto of his that they overrode. Confirming appointments. The Senate alone has the power to confirm, with a simple majority, many appointments made by the President. These include appointments made in the executive and judicial branches of government. As a result, whenever the President wishes to fulfill a vacancy in trial, appeal, or Supreme Courts of federal government, the Senate must give its consent. When a spot opened in 2010, President Obama's nominee, Elena Kagan, was confirmed by the Senate with 63 votes to 37. This also happens whenever a vacancy occurs in the senior executive branch post. The President must seek the Senate's approval for the replacement appointments. In 2013, when Secretary of State Hillary Clinton resigned, President Obama had to gain the approval of the Senate to appoint John Kerry to replace her. The Senate has the sole power to ratify, by a 2/3 majority, all treaties negotiated by the President. This means that the President needs to keep the Senate fully informed throughout treaty negotiations to avoid concluding treaties that the Senate is unlikely to ratify. In December 2010, the Senate voted by 71 votes to 26 to ratify the Strategic Arms Reductions Treaty negotiated by Obama with his Russian counterpart Dmitry Medvedev. Initiating constitutional amendments must also be approved by a two-thirds majority in both houses before it can be sent to the states for ratification. Another important power of Congress, under Article 2, Section 4, Congress has the power to impeach and remove from office public officials. This is a two-stage process, and each house performs one of the stages. The House of Representatives has the sole power of impeachment. The House has used this power 19 times since 1789, the most recent concerning Thomas Porteous in 2010 on charges that included corruption and perjury. In 1998, the House impeached President Clinton on 2 counts, perjury and obstruction of justice. The Senate has the sole power to try all impeachments. The Senate trial is to determine whether the person is guilty of the offence they are accused. If they are found guilty by a two-thirds majority, the person is immediately removed from office. In the case of Thomas Porteous in 2010, the Senate found him guilty and he was removed from office. But in terms of President Clinton in 1998, the Senate acquitted him on both counts. Therefore, charges of being impeached are far more likely to occur than those being found guilty of impeachment. Both houses must concur to declare war. This has only happened 5 times in the last couple of hundred years, when America declared war on Japan in the Second World War in 1941. Since the mid-20th century, Congress has found itself sidelined by presidential war-making, for example, both the Korean and Vietnam Wars. The 25th Amendment, passed in 1967, gave both houses the power to confirm a newly appointed vice president. Note carefully that this power relates only to a vice president who is appointed, not those who are elected. The 25th Amendment gave the President the power to fill a vacancy of a Vice President, should the Vice President either become President, resign, or die in office. This has only happened twice. In 1973, when Spiro Agnew resigned and President Nixon appointed Gerald Ford to succeed him. Ford was confirmed by the Senate with a 92-3 majority, and the House of Representatives voted 387 to 35. The following year, President Nixon resigned, and Ford then became president. Ford then appointed Nelson Rockefeller to succeed him as vice president. The votes on that occasion were 90 to 7 in the Senate and 287 to 128 in the House of Representatives. One final power that has only been used by Congress twice, once in the year 1800 and 1824, is if the presidential election has no winner with an absolute majority of the Electoral College, then the House of Representatives is charged with electing the President and the Senate the Vice President. They can both also initiate constitutional amendments, however this must be approved by two-thirds of both houses before it is sent for ratification. Both must agree to declare war, and both have the power to appoint newly appointed vice presidents. Trump's impeachment is a good example of Congress's power. The first time Trump was impeached by the House was in 2019, but this was acquitted by the Senate. There were 2 accusations against him: the abuse of power and the obstruction of Congress. All 53 Republicans in the Senate found him not guilty of obstructing Congress, and 52 Republicans found him not guilty of abuse of power. Mitt Romney, a former presidential nominee who ran against Obama during his second-term election, was the first senator to vote to convict a president of his own party. You need a two-thirds majority to convict a president. There is a common argument that the Senate is more powerful and prestigious than the House. House members often seek election into the Senate, but never the other way round. There are significant reasons why the Senate can be considered the more prestigious of the 2 chambers. If we break down the powers of Congress, we can see that the Senate has more powers than the House of Representatives does. Also, the power given to the Senate, the ability to confirm appointments and ratify treaties, is generally seen as more powerful and important than the sole power of the House of Representatives, which is to begin the consideration of money bills. Other reasons why the Senate can be seen as the better of the 2 chambers is while House members represent a congressional district, senators represent the entire state. For example, Henry Cuellar represents only the 28th Congressional District of Texas, but Senator John Cornyn represents the entire state of Texas. A senator like Cornyn also enjoys a 6-year term, whereas a House of Representatives member only serves 2 years. Also, a senator is 1 in 100, whereas a congressman, the official title for a member of the House of Representatives, is 1 of 435 currently. Because of the smaller size of the Senate, a senator is more likely to be offered to chair a committee, subcommittee, or hold some other leadership position. The Senate is also seen as a launching pad for a presidential or vice president campaign. Presidents Harry Truman, John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and Barack Obama were all senators before presidents. 5 senators have ran for president in the 2016 election alone. Finally, senators enjoy significant exclusive powers that the House of Representatives does not. However, when it comes to passing legislation, senators and the House of Representatives enjoy equal powers, and they both receive the same salary.